You have to stake the heart of a vampire to kill it, and Valentine's at the time of writing is just around the corner. Weak connection, but another excuse to make it the theme of this week's episode, as we cover The Vampire Dies in No Time and Irina, the Vampire Cosmonaut, to determine whether or not they are worth watching. Starting off with The Vampire Dies in No Time, a comedy about a vampire and a vampire hunter getting stuck together and seeing the humorous situations they get into. The vampire is Draluk, an immortal being of the night, who is turned into dust by the slightest thing, like a slightly strong breeze, for example, but will turn back to normal shortly after. But being a vampire was enough for the local town to use him as a tourist trap, eventually resulting in the hunter Renato showing up and accidentally burning down his castle. Now Draluk has moved in and is an interesting enough addition to Renato's life for Renato's book editor to strong-arm Renato into making him his roommate. A lot of the comedy from the show is derived from the duo going out to defeat other major vampires, and how ridiculous the major vampires' powers are. Most of them are rather lewd, but in a juvenile sense, if you catch my drift. For example, we got a nudist vampire, a micro-bikini vampire, a strip Rochambeau vampire, and the Lutok vampire. All their powers basically just result in the victim doing said activity, be it wearing a micro-bikini or making it so you can only speak in lewd remarks. This design choice doesn't exactly rub me the wrong way, but isn't what I would call a top-notch comedy. That's not to say that this series doesn't have a few decent jokes, as I enjoy the comedy about the most competent and dangerous vampire just having god-awful luck, as well as the jokes around Draluk's grandfather and everyone loving Draluk's familiar John. Speaking of John, he is the best. Look at the cute armadillo. Look at the cute armadillo. So he definitely makes my opinion of the series much more positive. So, results may vary, but I would say watch the series for John, and maybe if you enjoy a series where everyone's an idiot, but again, mostly for John. Now we start our coverage of Irina, the Vampire Cosmonaut, the story that asks the important question: what if we did the space race but added vampires? Thus, our story follows Lev, aspiring cosmonaut in the not USSR, after not Sputnik made it its trip into space. The next step is to send a human into orbit, but they need to make sure it's safe, so they plan to use a vampire to test the craft to make sure that it's safe for humans. Vampires being an oppressed race of second-class citizens in the not USSR and the not US. But the vampire in question is, of course, the titular Irina. Now, Lev must instruct Irina through the training to prepare her for her voyage. But through the training, he realizes that his society's racism of vampires is unfounded, as well as getting closer and closer to Irina, even forming a romance with her, as he's ready to let her give him the ultimate hickey on his neck. But that increases the tension, as Irina is seen as a disposable cog in a machine to be put to death as soon as her voyage is done. Thus, he needs to make sure to prove her worth to keep her alive. I think this is the strongest part of the series, as we dance on that knife's edge as Lev balances his relationship with Irina with his standing within the government, as he's still technically in the running to become the first cosmonaut. The second half I feel is a bit weaker, but not bad, as we shift focus to Lev as he competes to become the first cosmonaut, as his former rivals finally start to see Irina as a fellow cosmonaut, culminating in Lev going to space, coming back a hero, and giving a little speech to end vampire racism. Which is all fine and dandy, but I felt it was more of a shift in pace intended to send the people home happy, with a simple but nice conclusion, instead of hoping to get a second season. While this is respectable, and I want to preface what I say next, that I do find that this series is good, and those who enjoy space, romance, or vampires should enjoy the series. But I do believe that if this series had more time, there were plenty of things to explore still, mostly in its world building, as I will love to learn more about this series' interpretation of vampires and their society, and the relationship their society have with other countries. As we do get some hints, and some things can be assumed, but I wouldn't mind more. Also, I think more organic growth and interactions between Irina and the rivals would have made their eventual acceptance of her feel more natural. The same goes for the Supreme Leader and his secretary's plan to inspire a revolution to end the purges associated with the not USSR, which felt a bit forced to get their happy ending. But as previously stated, the series tells a good story well enough and has enough good qualities to recommend it to some parties, even if it's a bit heavy-handed in getting there.